So what's going to happen is that once you log into auto review, the very first screen that you're going to see is called practice dashboard. Now on this practice dashboard, you're going to find out list of all your clients, and you can find out where does each client stand in terms of the review progress, right? So just to give you an example, I can see this is the client, this is the month in progress in terms of the review, and this is the percentage. Now, I'll also touch base on this the particular point as to how this progress is calculated, right? But the whole idea here is to give you guys a clarity as to where does each client stand. If you wanted to add a new client, you can click on add client, and you can easily connect your QuickBooks, Xero, file pretty easily. And when you click on the client name, it will then let you enter into that particular client. And then once you are into that client, the very first thing that you will have to do is to select the review period. Now, this is where you will be selecting the review period. So auto review is pretty much flexible, where it allows you to select 1 month or multiple months, which means, let's say if you wanted to do a quarterly review or monthly review or yearly review, right, you can easily do it. So for example, let's say I wanted to select this quarter, I can select here and this, and then just simply do the run, right? So this allows you to also do a cleanup work. A lot of our clients actually use this for cleanup work. Like, let's say you got a new lead and you wanted to find out how kind of bad or good the books is maintained. All you could do, just come here and say that, hey, I wanted to review the whole year, like January to October. Simply select the whole range, do the run, and you will then be able to find out what are the different problems that the books has got, which will then help you figure out how much cleanup work is required, and accordingly you can coach your client as well, right? So for the purpose of this call, I'm going to select July to September, and then I'm going to click on run. Once you click on that, this left panel are the different review points. All right. So what's going to happen, guys, is that one by one, we need to go through each of these review points and then take appropriate action. Now, there are a couple of things I wanted to point here is that, and in fact, I would say that these are the best practices that our customers have implemented over a period of time. Number one is that they are not now waiting for the month to end and then start the review process. What they have started doing is that they have started using auto review on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, because they don't want to carry forward any of those issues for the month end, right? And what they have also done is that they have now started asking the junior staff to go through this list and take care of these issues, right? Which eventually help the reviewers save time, because many of these things can easily be, I would say, easily be resolved by the junior staff. And I'll kind of give you an example as well. So let's say the very first thing, um, I'm into uncategorized entries. There are 7 transactions that I need to reclassify them to appropriate accounts. All right. Now let's say there's an auto spot here. I want to find out if at all there are any transactions recorded for this vendor in the past. Then I want to check the history. All I can do right click on it and I can say smart search. I can immediately see all the transactions recorded for this vendor. I can see most of them went to automobile. I'm gonna close it. I'm gonna come here and say, hey, this is automobile, right? So it's super easy to find any transactions for any vendor just on a one click, right? And I can simply make the changes here, and the changes also get reclassified back to the QuickBooks file as well, right? So that's how it works. It's a two-way sync. Now, there are Amazon.com transactions. So let's say, for example, I know that these are all office expenses. I can select them all, and I can say that, hey, all these transactions are for office expenses here, and I can also do the bulk reclassification. Okay, I can apply the changes. All these transactions will also be updated back into the QuickBooks file. I don't need to go to a separate screen to, first of all, query those transactions and then reclassify them. I can be anywhere in the system and I can kind of do multi-select and I can simply reclassify them to appropriate accounts, right? And another situations could be, and this is where I'm going to talk about our newest feature, which is a client portal. So let's say I don't know what these transactions are for, and I need to get some information from the client, right? So previously, what used to happen is that you might be doing an Excel export, or you might be writing an email to client asking information for these transactions. But now, since now we have client portal released, all you can simply do is that you can simply select the transactions just like this, just say ask, and just say what are these transactions for. So these are all the template questions that we have it here. You don't have to type in the whole question. Just click on any of this template and it will type in the questions for you, and just simply click on the ask, right? So this is the best and easiest way to ask all your questions to your client. The way it's gonna work is that we have a separate interface for the client where client can get in and client can also start responding. So imagine from your client perspective, they don't have to worry about tracking your emails. They don't have to worry about downloading the Excel, then providing the feedback and then sending back to you, right? It's super easy. The moment you ask your questions, client can also get in, and I'm also gonna show you what your client's gonna see. So this is your client's interface, right? Your client's only gonna find out that, hey, these are all the open questions that they have to provide feedback for, right? So as you can see, there are all these questions, and you can see the question here. It says, please send me a receipt for this, all right? And all your client can do, so right now I'm logged in as client. As a client, I can say, like, here you go. I can attach the document just like this, and I can simply say send, right? And then additionally, what I can also do is that I can also suggest, like for example, in this case, it's uncategorized expense account. I might also say as a client that, hey, this was actually a furniture that I kind of bought, or this was actually an office expense that I kind of did, right? So things like this, your clients can also provide feedback for, right? So as you can see, your clients don't have to kind of, I mean, do a back and forth between the emails, right? And this is again came from my own experience, because when I used to communicate with my client, like I might be sending 10 questions to my client, and out of those 10 questions, clients may have only answered to 4 or 5 of them. Now, client might be holding up the whole email because they have still kind of to figure out the rest of the question. So it was also delaying the whole process. Some clients might just be sending the response as they know the answer, but then it will result into a lot of back and forth. So this will completely avoid that, because now whatever questions that you know the answer for, you can just simply come here and start responding it, right? So even the kind of whole time of getting response has been really drastically actually improved, right? So as a client, the moment you respond to any of your questions, it will kind of be, I would say, moved from open questions to resolve ones, right? So at any point of time, your clients will only going to see list of all the open questions, right? So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there is no rocket science as such, but it's more about like they can provide the feedback. They might also suggest the account, and they can just resolve it. That's it, right? Which otherwise they would have to do either on Google Sheet or Excel or email, right? Now, once you receive your the feedback from your client, you can come here, client question. So we have a separate space where we just display all the questions that you are still waiting for your client to answer. Then we have this tab that says to review. This is where you're gonna find out anytime your clients provide a feedback, right? So you exactly know that you need to work on these 12 questions where you've received the feedback. Now, either if you are satisfied with the answer, you're gonna resolve it. If you're not satisfied with the answer, then send it back to your clients, right? So I'll give you an example for this one. Here client has attached a document, right? Now you could say that like this is, let's say, not readable, and you want to send it back to your client. All you could do is that you could say, hey, this is not readable, please send me a better copy. So things like this you can actually type in and you can send it back as well, right? So now what's going to happen is that these questions will then start appearing on a client as open questions, and they can again upload the better copy and the process will continue. But if you are satisfied with the answer, all you're going to do is that you're going to just kind of make the changes here itself and you can resolve it, right? Now you will wonder that like there's uncategorized expense. This is where the transaction is posted currently. And this one, which is highlighted like this, it is actually a client suggestion. So the point to be noted here is that whenever your client suggests you something, it is not going to update your QuickBooks file directly. You, being an accountant, will have to approve it, and then it will then sync back to the QuickBooks file. Because we understand that at times clients are not the accountants, they may not exactly know what accounts to choose, right? So that decision we have left it on accountants to decide. So if you decide, if you want to accept it, just click on it and it will then update the QuickBooks file. Or if you don't want to accept it, you still have an option to choose another account, and then you can actually save it from here as well, right? So it's super easy if you want to accept the suggestion or if you want to send this question back to your client. All right. I'm just gonna quickly check the chat just want to make sure that if there's anything. Yes, Tracy. So I think Manish has already answered. So the client can respond it. And one more thing I wanted to also suggest is that let's say you requested a receipt for one of the transaction and client actually uploaded it, right? When you click on this attachment icon, you will see this option where you can actually upload this particular receipt to the QuickBooks transaction itself. What this means is that when you click here, it is actually going to attach this particular document in your client, meaning in that particular transaction in the QuickBooks file, right? So you don't have to separately download this document and then attach it to the QuickBooks file, right? So that way it's super handy as well. And another thing that you can also do is that, let me just see. Okay, you can also do like this, like add to description here. So let's say your client put a comment like I bought a computer or whatever, and if you want to copy that particular comment to the description in your transaction, you can also do that from here. So this way you can kind of easily know and easily track for that particular transaction just by looking at the description, right? You don't have to separately copy this description or comments from the client and then paste it into description. Just by clicking it here, it's going to update your QuickBooks description for that particular line item, right? So that way, even in future, whenever you are looking at that transaction, whether in auto review or in QuickBooks file, you're gonna find this comment as well. So this is also a pretty helpful feature as well. Uh, So I hope it's not, Manish, is it annoying kind of thing? Or because I kind of see the,
No, they're
is it?
just few firecrackers. So yes, we can hear a bit
Okay,
sound,
okay.
not that much. So
Okay, okay. Okay, okay, okay. Thank you, David, and sorry about that. So, all right. So, while we are talking about these transactional questions, I also wanted to talk about the non-transactional question, right? So, in auto review, you can even also ask any other questions than the transaction. So let's say you were kind of into this and all of a sudden you wanted to request a document from your client. You can simply come here, click on ask questions and say, hey, can you send me Jan 2020 bank statement, something like this, right? So you can even ask this kind of questions as well. So it works the same way as the transactional question. Now, the best part about this is that is like, and I'm actually gonna touch base on this later this call is the custom views. So, as many of you might already be knowing that you can actually create your own custom review points in Auto Review. So, I created one view that says fixed asset purchases without receipt, right? So I want to make sure that I need to have a receipt for each and every fixed asset purchases that I make, right? So I created this view. So now it's super easy for me because I can see there are 7 transactions. All I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select them all. I'm gonna say ask. I'm gonna say I need receipt for this, and I'm just simply gonna say ask, right? So it's super easy to ask questions to your client. Now, one thing you might be wondering is that how are clients notified about all these questions that we are asking? Now, there are a couple of ways actually how clients are notified, right? Number one, you can actually schedule the notifications. What I mean by that is that when you click on client setting, there is a way where you can actually schedule the notification. Like you could say that, hey, every week I want a notification email to be sent to my client on, let's say, this particular days and on this particular time, right? So if at all there are open questions that require answer from your client, it's gonna send an email to to remind your client that, hey, can you provide me a feedback for this, and you can also actually, and we have a template as well where you can actually define how exactly the email should look like, right? But for now I just wanted to touch base on how your clients are notified, right? So one is schedule one, and another one is where you can actually initiate the manual notification as well, which means that, let's say right now itself you updated some questions and you just now wanted to remind your client to provide the feedback. You can even initiate the email right itself. So what's going to happen is that when you click on this client questions, there is an option here. It says notify client. When you click on it, there's an email template here. So when you click on send, what this is going to do is that it's going to send an email right now, right? So this is another way to remind your client as well. So this is a default template, which you can also change it in your practice setting. But if you also want to change it to real time, you can also do it right here. I mean, in case if you wanted to add some custom text, you can also do that, right? So that way you can remind your client. So this is how the client portal works. I'm going to come back to the speed mode, which is where you can see list of all the different review points, right? So what's going to happen is that one by one, I'm going to go through each of these review points and I'm going to take an appropriate action, right? So I'll give you another example of entry posted to parent account. Now in QuickBooks, you guys might be familiar that you may have a parent account and then you may have a sub account as well, right? So whenever there are transactions recorded to parent accounts instead of sub accounts, it's gonna show up here, right? And all you want to do is that you want to reclassify these transactions to appropriate sub accounts. So in this case, there is a one transaction here, I can select it, and either I can select it, or I might just change it from here itself and just put it to another sub account, right? So it will immediately be reclassified to appropriate sub account, right? So it's super easy kind of to reclassify these transactions to appropriate sub accounts. So many of these review points, like entries without class or entries without location or entries without name, are pretty much straightforward, right? Now, especially with entries without class or entries without location, these are mainly, it's not like um, it's always gonna show up. If you have at all enabled class and location in your client QuickBooks file, then and then it's gonna show up. Otherwise, it's not gonna show up at all, right? So it's more like a kind of conditional. But if at all, like, see, these are all the different review points, and if you would say that, hey, I really don't need to track these entries without customer or project as such, you still have an option. You can click on this menu, click on configure, and you can enable or disable any of these review points, right? So you have a full flexibility to decide which review points you want and which review points you don't want. And whatever changes that you make here will only stay and saved for this particular client only, right? So it's not gonna be updated for all the clients. Now, uh, each of these review points has also got some sort of configuration, right? So when you click on this config, you have an option to decide if you want to exclude certain accounts, right? So the better example would be, actually, let me just go to entries without class, click on config, and you have an option to exclude certain accounts, right? Because it might be possible that there are certain balanced accounts you may not be necessarily tracking class. You can actually exclude it. So that way you're not gonna find it ever. Like in this case, I only selected the profit and loss accounts because this is where I want to keep, I want to track class, right? So this way, it's pretty flexible where you can configure it depending upon each of these review points. So each review point will have its own different configuration, right? But this, I just wanted to make a point here that in case if you want to change something here and there with the configuration of any of the review point, you can click on this config icon and you can do it as well. Now, each of these review points is also exportable into the Excel file. Click on this export Excel and you can also easily find it into the Excel file. That's one way to export individual review points. But if you wanted to review all of them together, click on this menu and then you can actually export all the review points on one simple click, which means you will just have one Excel file which will have different sheets with each of these review points. So that way it's super easy, just in case if you want to share with your client or whoever, it's super handy, right? So that's that. Now, there are some options on the screen which you're going to find it across all the screens, which is, I'm going to talk about this question. So while you can actually select multiple transaction and ask questions from here, if you just wanted to ask question on any particular transaction, you can come here, click on ask question, and this is where you can also ask questions to your client as well. You can also edit any transaction just by doing a one click. Like in this case, let's say it's missing the class, and if you wanted to, let's say, kind of uh, associate the class here, you can also do it here. Just say, hey, this is admin or whatever, and it's gonna update it here. But if you wanted to open the whole transaction on the screen, click on this edit transaction here, and it will then open the transaction here, and you can, it's similar to QuickBooks where you can actually assign the class here as well. All right, so this is where you can actually open the whole transaction here. Now, another thing that you can also see it here is in case if you want to delete the transaction, you can delete from here. Now this one is, it says view in accounting software, where if you wanted to actually view these transactions into accounting software, which could be a QuickBooks or Xerofile, this is basically a shortcut link, like it's hyperlink. When you click here, it's going to take you to the QuickBooks file on that particular transaction, and then it will kind of allow you to view that particular transaction easily, right? So that's that. Just kind of quickly checking chat if there's anything. All right. I can see on the review results where can we see the amount of the transaction. So I think Anila, I think you can see the amount here. And just in case, there might be so many columns, guys. So in case if you wanted to change the order of the columns, it's pretty simple. Just simply drag and drop. Like I wanted to see the amount here, I wanted to say the name here. You can simply drag and drop the column. And if you wanted to enable or disable any of the columns, simply click on these horizontal lines. And then you also have an option to decide, like there are all the columns enabled. I don't want to see all the columns. I just wanted to see some of the columns. I can also do it that way, right? So it's super easy from that perspective to kind of decide which columns you want to see or which columns you don't want to see. All right.
Thank you, Hardik. That was super helpful. I just didn't see it in the initial, when you had pulled it up, not realizing you can scroll to the right, obviously, but thank you so much.
No problem. And by the way, this is more like a pretty, I would say, more like an Excel pivot table kind of thing. So let's say, see, right now it's grouped by account, but you would say that, hey, I also wanted to further group by the name. You can also do that. It's like more like a drag and drop here.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you can actually play around pretty much just like you would do in Excel. So,
yeah, right? That's super helpful. Thank you.
All right. So now what's going to happen, guys, is that one by one, you're going to go through each of these review points and you're going to take appropriate action. And each of these review points, we have an info icon here. So whenever you put your mouse on any of these review point, you're going to find out a brief description as to what it is all about, right? And there's a brief description, but when you click on learn more, it's going to open a detailed article about that, right? So this is where we have all the details written along with the video tutorials. So just in case if you guys are stuck somewhere and if you need some help, this eye icon will actually provide you all the necessary information as such. Now, one thing actually I forgot to tell you is once you have selected the review period, you will have to do a start review. In this case, the review process has already been started. That is why you see end review. But otherwise, you're going to find out it's start review, right? Now, what's going to happen is that, let's say, once you are done reviewing any of this particular review point, you can do this sign off. When you sign off, this particular review point will turn into green, and then this percentage will actually get increased, right? So our goal would be eventually to see all of those review points turn into green, and eventually the progress bar will reach 200%, right? So that's how the flow should be, right? So as I mentioned, many of them are very much straightforward. I'm going to touch base on some of the important ones, which is a duplicate entries. So auto review is pretty smart enough where it's gonna, there are various parameters. Based on that, it's gonna find out duplicate transactions, right? So in this case, there are two Amazon transactions with the same amount, with almost similar date, same transactions type. Auto review feels that it could be a duplicate, right? Likewise, there is another situation where there's a bill and there's an expense also, right? It's the same amount and it's almost a close date, right? So in this particular case, auto review feels that this expense could be probably a bill payment right? But it just got entered as an expense, right? So it feels that it could be a duplicate expense altogether. So things like this will also be highlighted as duplicate. Now, if if it's a, like in this case, if there are two expenses which are actually a duplicate, you can simply open it and delete it, right? But things like this, where you wanted to convert an expense to a bill payment, you'll have to do it from the QuickBooks, right? Another situation could be, you could also say that, hey, this is not duplicate, right? All you could do, you can do a sign off. Now we have this feature called sign off, where if you it's like you're telling auto review that, hey, this is not a problem, which means auto review is going to hide this from here, right? So when you do sign off, it will be hidden, because now you're telling auto review it's all fine, I don't need to take any action on this particular transaction, right? So this is how you can get rid of any of the problems that auto review thinks it's a problem, but it's actually not a problem. Manish, so far so good. I just want to make sure it's not disturbing at all to the people. So
No, it's quite fine, Hardik.
okay, thank you. All right, so duplicate names is just like I mean duplicate entries, where all we try to identify is duplicate, because see, I mean, we don't generally keep I mean attention to this, because it does not really impact our bottom line, or it does not really impact our balance sheet, right? But what is wrong is wrong. So in this case, you can see there are two customers created with almost an identical spelling, right? So auto review is smart enough to identify some of this kind of duplicate names, right? So that way you can then take appropriate action to merge them. Now you cannot merge here, but this eye icon will take you to the QuickBooks file on that particular vendor or customer, as the case may be, and then you can merge it in your QuickBooks file, right? So this will help you make sure that you have a clean and accurate vendors, customers, and employees list in your QuickBooks file. All right. So now the next one is unreconciled entries, which is where you can actually see list of all the unreconciled transactions. All right. Now the best part about this is that you don't have to go to every single account, right? You can see all the unreconciled transactions on one single screen. You can find all the accounts here. As you can see, you don't have to go account by account, and you can actually see all the unreconciled transactions here itself. All right. So this is one thing, and the second thing is that it's not just like we have simply put the unreconciled transactions here. We also flag them. So the way we flag them is that, let's say you have some transfer entries which have not cleared since long, or you have some debit card entries which hasn't cleared since long. So things like those, I mean, those kind of transactions will be actually flagged, right? So that's that. Then you got new vendors, new customers, new GL, which is where you can simply check all the new vendors, how exactly it's been coded, right? So it's like, I would say, it's a quick sanity check I would do. If, especially if my staff has created any new vendors, I can simply come here and see how exactly it's been coded, and I can kind of change it. Just in case if I need to change any transactions, I can do it here. Mm. David, I'm not sure. At class missing in transaction, I'll kind of have my support answer that. We'll have to know. I can see your comment. We'll have to find out the client name and some of the other information to investigate further. So I'll have the support team look into this further, and we'll definitely kind of get this sorted. So, all right. So this is where you can actually use these new vendors. There are many of other review points. This one actually you might find it pretty cool. Is where you can see list of all the vendors, customers, and GL list. Generally, we don't kind of pay attention to our vendors list or customers list, right? We keep creating this list. So this is the best place where you can see list of all the vendors with the last entry date, and you can actually see there are many of them which haven't been used for a while. You can select multiple of them and you can make them inactive on one simple click, right? So it's super easy to make sure that you have a clean and accurate vendor, customers, and account list in your QuickBooks file. Account balance checks will help you find out if at all there are any of the accounts carrying unusual balance. So like for example, cash on hand ideally should carry a positive balance, but in this case it carries a negative balance. So there's a conflict here, right? So all it tells you that, hey, this account requires attention, right? And then you can take appropriate action on that. If you wanted to quickly look at the transaction for that account, just simply do a right click, just say smart search, and you can immediately look at all the transactions for that accounts on the screen, if there are any, right? So in this particular case, there aren't any for this particular period, but if there were any, then you can simply, you don't have to go to a separate place to look for those transactions. And this is also where you can also, on the top there's a search bar where you can also use that, by the way. You can type in the vendor name, customer name, amount, description, anything and everything, and it's gonna pull up the transaction. So let's say I wanted to quickly pull up the transaction for bookkeeping fees. I can just type in bookkeeping fees here and click on it, and it's gonna pull up the transaction for that account, right? I don't even have to specify what I'm looking for, which means I don't have to specify whether it's a vendor, customer. I just have to simply type it, right? So it's super easy to search anything. This one is, I would say, pretty cool. Most our customers have kind of loved this because this is the best way to review all your expenses pretty smoothly, pretty quickly. All we are doing here is that we're taking all your expenses, summarizes them by vendor, and then further group them by the accounts. So in this case, as you can see, this is a SAM CPA. Generally, it gets recorded to this account called accounting, and this is the history by month, right? So as you can see, in one of the month, it got coded to an account called bookkeeping fees, and auto review flagged it automatically, right? So auto review understands the trend of the transactions, the history, and if something is off the trend, then it's gonna flag it, right? Likewise, if something is wrong with the amount as well, it's gonna even flag it as well. So as you can see on my screen, there's a 400, 400, 400, but there's a 500 here. So there's a flag here, right? So not only it looks for the inconsistency with the account, but it also looks for the inconsistency with the amount as well, right? So it's super easy. So, it's pretty like, I would say handy, because all you have to do, just scroll down like this, and you can simply find out where the problems are. And we also have a quick filters at the top. So if you really don't want to scroll down from top to the bottom, all you could do, you can simply use these filters here. Just say GL risk classification or amount inconsistency or missing trace, which will actually kind of quickly pull up all those vendors that have that kind of discrepancies. All right. So, and by the way, all of those amounts are clickable. So let's say in this case, bookkeeping fees was the incorrect account which was used. I could simply click on this 550 here. I can see all the transactions that make up to this 550, and I can make the changes here, right? So all these amounts that you can see here are easily clickable, and you can drill down to the transaction level as well. All right, just gonna quickly see the chat. Yeah, there isn't anything as such, so I'm gonna move to the next one. So this save such views, we're pretty much close to the end of this session. So this is the good one where see until here review expenses, where you can actually, I mean, most of these review points come default, right? But just in case, if you wanted to create your own custom review points, you can actually create it here as well, right? So when you click on add, right? When you click on add, you have various parameters to add, right? You can kind of various parameters where you can select GL account, you can select amount, the various parameters you can choose. So the best example I could give you is that you could say that, hey, you could like say that, hey, I wanted to find out all the transactions in fixed assets that are less than $2,000, right? In this particular case, I can simply select the account, like here fixed assets, and I can simply say that, hey, I like line amount should be less than $2,000. And then the best part about this is that I can also save it, which means that I don't have to remember it all the time, right? It's just a one-time thing. I can save it once and it's gonna save it here forever. So as you can see, I created some of these review points here, right? So for example, this is what I kind of previously mentioned, that I specifically wanted to track all my fixed assets purchases without receipt. I don't have to remember, I don't have to go and look every single fixed asset account. I simply created this search view. All I now need to do is just come here, click on it, and I'm gonna quickly find the transactions here. Another example I kind of was just talking is, I created one view that says, show me any transactions in fixed assets that are less than $2,000, right? Which means I can simply select them all and I can kind of easily reclassify them to appropriate sub accounts as well, right? So it's super easy from that perspective. So this is the best way also to kind of create your own custom review points, right? So I think you guys got the concept as to the like how exactly the auto review should be used. The whole thing about auto review that we wanted to do here is that we don't want you to go to every single account in the profit and loss, or kind of look at long list of transactions and then find for the issues. Rather, we want you to focus on these problematic areas so that you can focus on them and you can fix on them one by one, right? So it's super easy to kind of create also your custom review points, because we understand that each client works differently. They may have their own different review points, and that is why this will help you create your own custom review points as well. All right, so there's a chat here. I'll kind of check that. All right. Now, there are a few things I also wanted to touch base here. Is some of the general features, guys, is that there's a question help center here. Just in case, if you wanted to if you need any help, you can reach out to us here. Like find a time, you can schedule a call with us. You can chat with us. There are different resources available. There are video tutorials available as well. All right, so you can actually use any of this help here, right? There's an announcement here where anytime we come up with something new, you're gonna find it here. There's ideas where you can vote, because most of our features actually we release based on our customers' votes, right? So if at all you vote any of these features, we look at what our customers are looking for, and based on that we prioritize our roadmap accordingly, right? So this is another thing that you can actually use it as well. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'm gonna take a pause. Just in case, guys, if you wanted to unmute yourself, if you have any questions and ask, feel free to do that. You can also ask any questions to your chat as well. So the floor is open. So feel free, guys, in case if you wanted to, if you have any questions and if you want to bring it up. So.
If we send a request to one of the clients for support or backup or whatever, is there an option to where the request can be auto reminded to the client, so that way we're not having to come back to it and resend it again?
It's not specific to any particular request as such, but there's a general reminder which is actually going, right? So I'll kind of show you. So let me just show you. So when you go to client setting, there's a notification preferences that you can set. It's a general reminders that you can schedule, and it will actually be sent if at all there are open requests as such. And if you wanted to change the text, let me just show you what exactly gets sent into the reminder email. So when you go back to practice, and when you click on practice setting, there's an email template here. Notification to your client. This is how exactly it's getting sent. But if you want to edit the text and anything, then you can actually change it. But right now, it's not the reminder, it's not getting sent for any specific request as such. It's a general reminder which is getting sent. And with the button, it says provide feedback. It's more like a button. So when client clicks on that, it will then take them to the client portal, and they can start providing the response.
Second question, is there a place where we can keep copy of like key sheets or contracts, so that way we have it in one spot to know what is and isn't out of scope related to the work that we're doing? Because if we're having, let's say we're having to categorize specifically things for them that they should be doing as part of the contract, that we can then see that in the file and then go elsewhere to bill it.
So it's not there right now, Ray, but it is actually coming up end of this year. There are going to be a lot more new features that we are actually adding, right? So a lot of our customers have requested that they wanted to actually see right now, as you would have figured, that auto review's main value proposition is mainly about finding the problematic areas and around resolving them, right? But where we are heading towards is kind of make it a whole organized and robust closing system, where you can actually create your own to-do system, where you can create your checklist, and you can actually do the systematic close. And what you also spoke is also going to be taken care in our coming up release, but that's going to take time. That's going to happen most likely the end of this year. There are going to be many more features which will be actually coming up with that release. So
Okay, thank you for sharing. And I look forward to any updates that we get on those new features.
yeah, absolutely. So any other questions, guys?
Yes, can you actually perform one of the transactions? Can you go back into this, back into the portal, please? So we can see the, the categories.
You mean on the accountant side or client side?
The accountant side. So, for example, your uncategorized entries, can I, oh, well, it's at 0 now. I want to see you actually perform the task, make the change.
Uncategorized transaction? Yeah, 1 minute. This one, right?
Correct.
So what did you want me to do?
So when you're making the change, you're going to go here and actually, there's a drop down.
Yeah. So yeah, so once you select the account, when you click outside, it's going to update the QuickBooks file. In this case, my QuickBooks version is actually expired. This one you cannot add because your trial subscription has ended. So it's not doing that right now. But imagine if this was an active QuickBooks subscription, it would actually update that particular transaction right now into your QuickBooks file itself.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Any other questions, guys?
Yes, I do have a quick question. So once you get the client information, the email and all that set up, when you select ask a question, you can type in the information, click send. It'll go to the client, and the client they don't have to do anything on their part as far as accessing Xenett. They just click on that respond within the email, and it'll take them to the
So
link.
yeah, no. So let me tell you. So it's not an open link, Tracy. We have kept it. We have actually introduced as kind of a small security step in between, wherein they will be asked to set up a 6-digit PIN, right? Because we didn't want to keep it open, because at times you might be requesting some sort of document which could be pretty confidential, right? So imagine for the first time when your client gets an invitation, they will be asked to set up a 6-digit PIN. And let me just show you how exactly it's gonna look like, right? And all they have to remember is that 6-digit PIN. That's it, right? They it's more like a mobile passport, just like this, right? Even the email address they will not have to type in. It will automatically, like whenever you send an email, automatically reminder gets to send to your client. The email address will already be written. All they have to type in is 6-digit PIN. That's it, right? So we just didn't want to keep that link open because of the security reasons. So this is where they'll have to enter, remember that 6-digit PIN, just like their mobile passcode or any other passcode, and that's it. All they have to enter is that 6-digit pins, and they will be into the client portal. So
Okay, thank you.
because we understand that you might be requesting a tax return or bank statement, or like it's an open question, and you might be requesting anything as such, right? So just didn't want to kind of compromise that. So all right, I think we are pretty much to the time, but feel free, guys. Like our support team is actually available 24/7, so you can actually log into our app and reach out to our support team for any questions, and our support team will be happy to help you anytime. Or you can also send us an email at help@xenett.com, and our support team will also reach out to us, right? So thank you very much, guys, for attending this webinar. I hope you guys find this helpful. As I mentioned at the start of the call, we will have this regular training webinar every month. So I would encourage, in case if you guys have any new people joining your team, or if you guys wanted to find out what's upcoming new features or what's happening at Auto Review, I would kind of have you join this webinar every month. So that's pretty much it. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.